Hi everyone, I'm here with Ines Beyer, author of the book Death is Not the End. She's also an instructor at IAC, International Academy of Consciousness in Los Angeles. She has a master's degree in metaphysical sciences as well as certifications such as clinical hypnotherapy and past life hypnotherapy. Hi Ines.
Hi, Soma. Thank you for having me.
Can you share what this book is all about?
This book is about, actually, what I found is that we have a lot of evidence in books that I read and things that I researched. There's a lot of evidence or ways to conclude that we continue to exist after death. And there are even doctors who have done studies. And I feel like a lot of people, they wonder if there's an afterlife, but they don't really know. And they're not really aware that we do have studies and research for this. And there are many different topics and books, and some are very technical. So I wanted to kind of bring that together in a very easy to understand way, and kind of put that in this book and show, look, these are ways to conclude why we continue to exist after death. And there is research, actual research, and there's ways to even free yourself to explore that. So that was the idea behind the book. So it has a little bit about my background story, and it talks about the different the process of death, the death transitions. It talks about what to expect after we die, what happens between lives, how we plan for our lives, and also helping you if you're going through death or someone close to you is going through death, um, how to kind of go through that process in a conscious way.
How do you think this book can help people?
Um, death will affect any of us at some point in our life, right? Maybe not right now, but at some point, maybe somebody close to you is facing a life-threatening illness, or somebody having an accident, or you yourself are going through that. And that usually is like a wake-up moment, and we realize that time is precious, and we really need to take advantage of the time we have here. Um, and so, um, at some moment, we will be faced with death. So it helps to kind of understand it, because many of us we know a lot about babies, and we prepare for the arrival of a new baby, which is a wonderful thing, right? So we set up an account already, a college fund before the baby's born. We prepare the room, we read all the books, but we kind of avoid the topic of death, because it's uncomfortable. But there are also ways that we can prepare for death, for our own death, and even just knowing about the research of the afterlife and what to expect after and how to go through it consciously, I think can help tremendously anybody, really.
What are the commonalities or commonalities have you found in near-death experiences? Is there a certain pattern or a process that most of people go through?
Um, there are the near-death experiences are they have commonalities in certain aspects that people are experiencing. For example, they feel themselves lifting off the body, they observe the scene. Sometimes, if there's an accident, they might see people trying to help them revive their body, or the medics coming to help them, and doctors working on them. They might see deceased relatives arriving, having conversations with them. They might have conversations with spirit guides of theirs, talking about their circumstance, talking about their life, or about, um, even if they should come back or not, and the life review. Oftentimes, it's a common aspect of that. Um, but the way people interpret that and what they see sometimes differs based on their belief systems and their mindsets and their understanding. So, um, as you know, in psychology and NLP, or even here, the way what we believe, what we understand, what we know, kind of colors and filters how we perceive reality and how we perceive the world. Um, so the same thing happens also after death. So kind of, let's say I grew up being a Buddhist, I will connect more to a dimension and to beings on the other side related to Buddhism. Or if I've been praying to like Indian goddesses or gods or to Jesus, then that will be much more likely what I connect with. Um, and on the other hand, if I um, completely think there's nothing after death, it's even possible for there to be like a period of nothingness, of just emptiness. Not because there has to be, but because in my conditioning or in my perception, I'm not open to there being more. Um, but there are also certainly many cases where people don't believe in any of these things and they have these experiences and they see the other side and then they come back and they say, look, like Dr. Evan Alexander, uh, who's a neurosurgeon, saying, look, I was one of these doctors who said, oh, it's just a hallucination, it's just, not important. And then when they go through it, they realize it's real. And I think more and more um, we're advancing medical technology, so we can bring more people back, and so we'll also have more of these types of experiences, more people being able to talk about that.
So it's still something you see through your own filter, even after death. You still see it from your perspective. It's not like your perspective gets dropped off or something.
It's kind of more like with what we resonate with. So on the other side, the dimensions are you could see them as frequencies or as dimensions of energies of they're made up of information, energetic information, and also level of ethics, and there are different levels of dimensions in a way. And so our own being, our who we are um, as a consciousness, as a soul, we have a certain like a energetic fingerprint, you could say. It's very unique, and we resonate with a specific type of dimensions outside of the body. It's a range of dimensions, not just one, but it's a range of dimensions that we connect to. And so um, it's kind of more like attracts like, and what we resonate with more, we resonate more on the other side. So there, everything goes more by thought and by us being by energies.
Are there any similarities between near-death experience and out-of-body experience?
Um, yes, very much so. Actually, we call the near-death experience a forced out-of-body experience because they're both out-of-body experiences, but the difference is that in a near-death experience, it's the moment of being close to death or in a death situation or already in a coma that makes it a little bit different from a natural out-of-body experience. And then there's this big aspects of almost losing your body and the aspects of can I come back or not. Um, so the outer body experiences that we can have, they're natural, they can happen spontaneously, and we can even learn to have them. But usually they're more smaller ones. Maybe you kind of fly out of the window, you fly over the neighborhood, or maybe in another OBE you have a conversation with the spirit guide, and maybe in another out of body experience, you learn more about your past lives, but they're like maybe shorter, not as hugely impactful as a near death experience, where it seems like in a near death experience, everything's kind of bunched together, and usually the guides would like to take advantage of this time that they have the person there to show them the live review, to show them all these different things about dimensions, and then bring them back. So that's the difference. One is like very big experience, but a lot of things packed into it. And in the out of body experience, you can have many of them throughout your life with the same impact, with the same growth that can happen, but just more incrementally, and you have more time to adjust to it.
So near-death experience is a lot more expansive than out-of-body.
It usually it's more life impacting when it happens for many different reasons. The out of body experience can have the same thing, right? Because when let's say you have never had one, and you at some moment you lift up from the body and you see your body sleeping in bed, and you realize I'm here, I can think, I can perceive, I'm still myself, but my body, my brain is here. this can already change how we see our life, how we see everything. Um, so the potential is there for that, but the life and death aspect is missing. So it's you know, after a near accident or something, usually people will think more about their life. So it makes it more intense.
In your book, you talk about different types of bodies, soma, mental soma. Can you explain more about that?
Yes. So what we talk a lot about in consciousness science and at the IC is that we have as our essence, our soul, or our consciousness, we call it the consciousness, basically exists beyond the body or outside of the body, um, but it uses different bodies to manifest itself. So we have a different set of bodies. So we have the physical body, which is suited to the physical dimension and can interact with the physical dimension and perceive everything here. We also have non-physical body, or the astral body, or psychosoma, or there are many different names for that. It's the non-physical body, and that one is more suited to the non-physical dimensions. And this is also the body that we use in out-of-body experiences or when we're between lives. So this body doesn't really change. Like our physical body changes with each life, but the non-physical body stays the same. It might change the form or how we project ourselves, but it has different properties and different frequency. And then we also have the mental body, what we call the mental soma, which is it's actually not really a body in a sense. It's more the mental dimension is where the information is stored, where everything you could say like the big internet of everything, and then we have this body that can connect to that, but it doesn't have a shape or form. I mean, we call it body, but it's really more like a connection that through this essence of the mental soma uses the non-physical body and also uses the physical body. So we have multiple, right now, right here, we have all of them at once. If I die, I'm only going to have the non-physical and the mental soma. And some of the energies, the energy department.
And in this dimension of physical world, do you think we are not, most of us, we are not that connected with the mental soma?
But I think we are. I mean, the mental soma is also responsible for rational thinking, for knowledge, for wisdom, for understanding, for logic. So all of these things that we use on a day-to-day is also part of it, information. But just to give you the comparison, we can have a projection with the mental body, which is what we call this expansion of awareness or nirvana type of experience, or we call it cosmo-consciousness experience in consciousness science. And this is where you basically you don't really move away anywhere, but you kind of disconnect from the physical and even the non-physical body, and you just expand and become kind of merge with everything that is and try to understand kind of like the experience that you may have had. So this is also possible, but it's much more rare to have these types of experiences.
Can you elaborate more on the period between lives, on where we go and what happens exactly?
So once we disconnect, once the physical body dies, it kind of depends on how. There are different ways of what can happen. So if we have, we're more attached to things here, or we want to go back here, or we have unfinished business, or we feel like we need to take care of our family or of our state or whatever it is. Sometimes we stay more around, we usually call it more earthbound. And this is not the most healthy way, because what we want is actually to move on to the more proper dimensions where we can plan our next life, reflect on this life, and there's a lot of things to do there and to move on. And so if what we call like the second death is kind of in a way letting go of some of these attachments that we have, and it also kind of lets go of some of the energies, and then that allows us to to think more clearly, to have more lucidity outside of the body, and then we go to what we call our home dimension, which is where then we, right after death, usually we reflect on the life that we had. We, talk it over with our spirit guides, and then we have some time um, to to prepare eventually for the next life. But there is some time in between. Usually, we say um, the amount of time that we spend between lives is about, on average, the amount of time we spend here. So if somebody dies at age 78, they spend approximately 78 years non-physical. I mean, there are exceptions, there are accidents, there are sometimes reasons why people come back sooner to make up for something or to use the opportunities that they have. Um, like in the children that remember past lives. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Jim Tucker and Ian Stevenson, who studied children who remember past lives. And a lot of these, they found that they had tragic things that happened to them, accidents, or they got shot or killed, and then they sometimes come back very quickly and they remember their past life. They even have something, scars or birthmarks related to that, which I find very interesting.
And when they come back, do they have a choice on what kind of form they want to come back and what timeline?
A soul in general, it kind of depends on the level of the growth of the soul, you could say. So it's kind of like, I don't know if Lewis mentioned this example, like going through school. So when we're in first, second grade, we don't get to pick a lot of things, but they're more chosen for us because we don't really understand why we're going to school. And as we grow up and we have more experience, we we can choose our own. In college, we can choose our own classes that we want to take. So it's a little bit like that in evolution of the soul, of our consciousness, that with each life we mature, we grow, we become more ethical. There are many different ways we grow, and then the more maturity we have, the more we also get to have the freedom of choice. So we cannot 100% choose exactly what all of the circumstances, because there's other people involved and it's a group, and so these things are chosen together. But the more evolved, you could say, the more evolved we are through life, the more we get to say, to have say in it.
And this could be an odd question, but if a soul is a really old soul and might have explored many different life forms, what's the next stage for their evolution?
So from what we see, I don't know exactly, but from what we've seen, it seems that we develop through multiple lives until we could get to a stage where we have kind of resolved all the karma that we have. There isn't really anything more to improve, or our state is very peaceful usually. And there comes a time where sometimes souls will come back just to help others for a while, and then even after that, there might not be a need to come back to a physical body anymore, and then they go through the what we call the third death, which is deactivating the non-physical body, and then they stay as a free consciousness without any body in the other dimensions. And then what happens after that? So this is very rare, and this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow or in 20 lives. There's actually hundreds or thousands of lives ahead. But this is kind of how far we can see from people who had these expensive experience with these consciousnesses. Um, and what happens after that, we don't know. It's kind of like us being, like our cats trying to understand why we have an interview right now, why we need to go to work and pay our bills. So right now, where we are right now, trying to understand what free consciousnesses do, is very difficult because we're just not there yet. So that's how far we can see, and we don't know if it ends there, if there's another stage, or what happens there, if it starts over, cycles over, many different possibilities.
In your book, you also mention about different dimensions, physical dimension, extra physical dimension. Can you explain more in depth what that means?
Yes, so basically, the non-physical dimensions, there are many hundreds, thousands actually of non-physical dimensions. And then we have the physical dimension, which is the one that we know. Um, and in the extra physical dimension or non-physical dimensions, they're kind of made up of, like I said, they're kind of like frequencies in a sense. They all coexist. They're not like separate in any way, but they're here right now. Like we have, the radio channels passing through this air right now, and depending what you tune into, then that's the one that you can hear. So we have these different non-physical dimensions, and whatever we resonate with out of the body, we we tune into that dimension, and that's the one we experience. And then we kind of have a range where we can go. There's some lower dimensions that are more dense. They're more closely related to Earth, and then there are dimensions that are more lighter, they have less connection to the physical. Um, but there are maybe more dimensions where we prepare our lives. There are some dimensions where there aren't any structures or buildings where people just fly, and it's completely different.
And you also have mentioned about the process of NDE, three deaths, the process of deactivation. If you could explain.
So the first, I talk about the three deaths or three death deactivations. The first one would be the physical death, which is going to happen to all of us at some point. That either we get sick or something happens. Hopefully, we're very old when this happens, and we just die peacefully in our bed. But at some point, this body is going to give up, and we go to the physical death. So this is the first death. The second death would be the deactivation of the energetic remnants that we sometimes carry. So this would be attachments that we have to things here. It could be um, actually more precisely when we die, because in an NDE the people come back and they get to live. But what we've seen through our body experiences and to exploring the afterlife is that when someone dies, the first is the physical death. So they lose the physical body. Hopefully, this happens very late in life. We just die peacefully in our sleep. But sometimes it happens in an accident. But something happens to the body, um, doesn't function anymore, and that's the physical death. So that one we know. And then the second one would be it's more psychological or energetic disconnecting, which would be being able to let go of the physical life that we had, and letting go not in the sense that we don't care about the people that we leave behind or about our house or about the things that we've accomplished here, but more of seeing the bigger perspective that there's more, that we're still alive, we're going to see these people again later on in other lives, so we don't need to hold on so much to that, and then we can kind of progress in a healthy way. So it's more like an inner letting go or an inner releasing, but that also releases some of the energies. And haunted houses, like where there's like this, you could call souls that stay attached to a house there because for whatever reason, um, they usually have more of a denser energy that it can actually be seen and felt and sensed because they haven't really deactivated those energies, and then that keeps them there. But it's something internally. That's not something that can happen to us from the outside, but we kind of have to let it go, and be able to understand that there's more, that we can move on to these to the home dimension or the other realm where we can then get ready for the next life. So this has different aspects, right? So one is our personal um, attachments, and one is kind of the level of understanding that we have. if we've had, let's say, a lot of out-of-body experiences, we have maybe read about the afterlife, we're kind of open to it, we kind of understand a little bit more, we're more universalistic in a sense, then that'll help us much more to let things go. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, to help people understand what, because I want them to move on in a healthy way and not be stuck or repeat things over. Um, and so I go more in depth in how that happens and what are the things that keep us here, how we can let go. I think that's very important.
And is there an afterlife? Do you think there is an afterlife, a continuation of this?
Yes. Absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen it in my out of body experiences. And to me, it's also the most logical way of thinking, in a way. But yes, we do have multiple lives, and in between, we have the non-physical dimensions. And I would say sometimes this reality is even more real than this one. So this is kind of the dense version or the dense manifestation of some of these dimensions. So this is here, we come here in the physical body, the physical reality, because all of the, when we're in the non-physical, yes, in a way, I mean, they all influence each other and interact with each other, but the physical dimension is the one that is the most, it's the slowest, or the slowest to manifest things or to do things, but it also is the best one to help us accomplish things and to learn. Because when we're between lives, we're in the non-physical dimensions, we're kind of separated um, by our energies, by our frequency, by who we are. We're more separated there than we are here. So you could say, um, so what I'm trying to explain is that when we're between lives in the non-physical dimensions, each soul consciousness is, because there everything is kind of sorted more energetically. Um, that you will have dimensions that are more, they're not higher or lower, but you could say there's more different qualities of energies, right? So, and there we have, for example, the spirits guides would be in the dimension that's more lighter, sophisticated, more maybe more ethical, more growth happened there, or they created this dimension where they kind of their home in, and then there are other beings. Let's say somebody dies who is had lives of being a criminal or doing a lot of things out of fear, um, or a more troubled life. Sometimes they go to a dimension that relates more to that level. Uh, Not because they're punished or somebody sends them there, but that's what they resonate with. So extra physically, we have these layers and they don't necessarily interact with each other. So we can have an out-of-body experience and go to a very peaceful dimension that's very different from what we ever experience here, because there, that dimension would be more pure on that level. But then there's also lower ones, and then there's everything in between. So here in the physical, we come in this body, and we can have, let's say, the criminal can be here inside a body, and we can have a spirit guide coming here in the body. They also have physical life still. And so here they're on the same plane, they're on the same level, and they can, for example, be roommates, and they can help each other that way. So one gets to grow a little bit more, learn from the other, and the other one gets to help the other. And that's essentially what we do. We come here as groups of souls or consciousnesses, and we evolve together as a group. And we take on different roles. Sometimes we're brothers and sisters, sometimes we're colleagues, sometimes we're friends, and then that's or co-workers, and we support each other that way. And then that's how we learn. And that's not, um, it's more possible to do that here, and it doesn't happen so much on the other side. So this is also part of the reason why we come here, to have that school in a sense.
Have you had any personal out-of-body experiences or after the communication?
Yes, I have had out-of-body experiences. Um, Walking, through the wall, or actually my first out-of-body experience was, or the first, actually I had many, but the first one where it really kind of clicked was, I was maybe 14, and I got up in the morning and I tried to um, go out the door, and as I walked through my bedroom door, my hand would just go through the handle. I had this handle and it would just pass through it. And it was kind of like I was the ghost and I couldn't just open the door. I was like, what's going on? What's happening? And I just tried to open the handle. It didn't work. I got frustrated. So somehow I went back to my bed, and then I woke up, like for real, you could say for real, right? So I was kind of out of my body in that state, and then I really woke up, and I got up and I walked out and opened the door. And then I realized, you know what, that was not a dream, because if it was a dream, I would just open the door in my dream, right? But it was different. I could go, my hand would pass through it, and I sensed that I was in a non-physical body, or something was different. And I started also exploring out-of-body experiences.
Okay, can you share your after-death communication experience?
Yes, I have one that I wrote about in the book as well, um, where it was afternoon. I was at home by myself, doing homework. I was on the computer in the hallway. We had the computer in the hallway, and all of a sudden I hear footsteps. At first I heard footsteps, um, and I knew I was by myself. We have this apartment, but I could hear footsteps in my brother's room, and I thought, that's strange. Nobody's here. And I tried to kind of put it out of my mind, but I heard it and I could feel like somebody was there. And then I actually got up and I went to check, and of course nobody was there. And I thought, you're so silly, why are you going to check? And you know what? I hear noise all the time, things, rattling or whatever. It doesn't ever cause me to get up and check or to ask if somebody's there. But I felt like a presence, and then I guess there's somebody here. And then I tried to calm myself down, because I was young. I was still kind of afraid of these things. So I'm like, you know what? It's nothing. So I went back to my homework, sat down, and then I could feel the presence like right behind me, kind of looking over my shoulder. And I really got kind of freaked out. And then I thought, okay, this is something weird. And I kind of tried to communicate to it telepathically. And he said, whoever's here, please leave. I'm uncomfortable. And then it wasn't like a scary energy, but it just a presence and just like unusual, right? So and then a few minutes later, it was gone. I could immediately feel the shift in when the presence was there and when it was gone. And again, this, I hear a lot of noise, I feel a lot of things, but this has never happened in this way that I actually ask or go and walk and check. And so then I went on with my day. I forgot about it. But then the next day, my mom came to my room and she said, you know what, Ines, yesterday my brother's half brother, my dad's half brother had died. And so she told me about this. And I wasn't very close with him, but I was like, wow, that's sad. And then later I realized, wait a minute, that's what I felt. He came to say goodbye, or he came to visit, or whatever. And not because I had a connection with him, but because he had a connection with my dad, and maybe he could feel that I could sense something, or he was just making his um, goodbyes, right? So sometimes, also I describe this in the book, right after death, the first 2-3 days, usually they go around and they kind of go visit and they say their goodbyes, and sometimes we can see and hear and feel them. Um, and it's a very common experience, actually. It's about 30 to 40% of the US population who have had this type of experience, um, which Bill and Judy Guggenheim, they talk about this in the book Hello from Heaven. So it's a very common phenomena, but not a lot of people mention it because they don't want to look crazy, or their friends say, "Oh, you just miss your grandma and you just wanted to see her," and they kind of put it off. So we keep it to ourselves. But when you actually survey, and you anonymously ask people, it happens quite a lot. And to me, it's an indication that we continue after death. So it's another way of confirming that we continue after death. So that my experience was very real for me, because if I had known before that he died, then maybe I could have made it up, but I had no idea, and I felt it, and then I found it after. So to me, it was like, there's definitely something.
Can you explain more about the philosophy of dying consciously?
Yes. Basically, dying consciously is, to me, is to be more, first of all, preparing a little bit more about for your death, making sure before you die, something that you can do now, like prepare, have your will ready, have everything ready so that you can go in peace, so that there's nothing that you feel like you need to stick around for. Um, and also, as you go through the process, to kind of just be there and consciously experience what's happening. There are a lot of phenomena that happens, like deathbed visions. Um, Sometimes it seems like at these last moments, the dimension blend a little bit, so the physical and the non-physical kind of merge, and there's a lot of phenomena that happens in this field of energy that even bystanders that are around can feel, or they can sense, see things. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of these things, they get kind of, um, you know, um, they're not taken serious, or they say, oh, it's the drugs, they're hallucinating, or it's not real, or whatever they feel. Um, but sometimes these things are that they're already connecting to the other side, they're already connecting to the other side, already kind of being little by little introduced to letting go and to crossing over, and also helping people to pass through it, letting expressing feelings that they have, expressing things, or sharing things with family, just to kind of be conscious um, of the whole moment. And it's gonna be sad. You might cry, or you might, go through a lot of different emotions. But you just let it be, and you just kind of be present for it. Um, and to kind of consciously cross over and have that experience.
What do you think are some of the most common regrets people have in that situation?
Um, there's actually a wonderful book by Bronnie Ware. She's an Australian nurse, and she worked in a hospice as a hospice worker, and she helped a lot of people pass through the death. And she was saying that most people, when they're at their deathbed, they regret, first of all, that they worried so much about what other people thought and what they should be doing. And a lot of times in life, they were doing things that were expected of them, like you have to do this and that, or the family had certain ideas of what you should do. And they never really connected what they really wanted for themselves, or they were afraid. So a lot of times they realized, you know what, I should have just let myself be happier. I should have just go after that dream that I had, or um, they realize how important really life is, how precious the time is, and then sometimes they wish they had spent more time with family and friends, or with the kids. A lot of times, especially men, they focus a lot on their career and establishing all these things in life, getting ahead and ahead with professionally, but sometimes they realize at the end that maybe they wish they had spent more time with the children when they were young, or um, those are the things that people usually miss, like having more time with the people they love, or expressing their true feelings. Because a lot of times we hide how we really feel about something, or we have arguments, conflicts, fights, and we can't really express that. And at the end, both sides, right? If we leave and we have things unexpressed, or people that are left behind feel like, oh, I didn't get to tell her how much I loved her, or how much this meant to me, or anything really. Um, those are the things. And then that kind of helps us to reflect on if I were to die tomorrow, what are the things that I absolutely don't want to have regrets about? What are the things that, um, maybe the top three things that I can identify that I really, really want to do while I'm here? And then start taking steps towards that. And, maybe if it is making up with an old friend or like you didn't talk to your dad for whatever reason, try to make the reconciliations already now before it's too late. And it could be many different things. It could be learning a language or going to Machu Picchu, or but just kind of we get kind of caught up in the day to day. We have to do our chores, our errands. We have to go to work, and then this takes up most of our time. We have to go, we eat, and so we sometimes spend time doing mundane things we need to do. Of course, we have to have take care of ourselves, and we have to live well. But we also have a life. Some of us have like a life mission or life purpose that goes beyond those day-to-day things, and then to kind of help us or to kind of think about that and reconnect with, okay, if I came here in this body, besides doing what I have to do here in the work, the school, the chores, what else is there that I personally can bring um, to the people, right? Do I have any gifts, any special talents that I can share with others? And I think that's what it's all about.
How can people find their life mission if someone is confused about?
Um, Usually, the life mission is something that um, usually something that's a little more challenging. It's usually we're overcoming maybe some weaknesses of ours in doing it, but also something that's usually in service of others, helping others in some kind of way. And it's also using our strong traits, our things that we already do well, that we are very good at, and kind of um, bringing that in whatever way it is. Um, so maybe you don't think so much that you need to find that specific thing, but just doing something that you enjoy, that brings your service to others in some way, or to animals, or to the planet, or and that's we see this with the near death experiences, that a lot of times after the experience they come back and they realize, you know what, I actually there was a reason for me being here, and then they changed their life around dramatically, and they started sometimes changing professions, relationships, and they start focusing more on maybe more spiritual aspects, or more on being of service, or caring more about humanity, and, and and we don't have to go through a near death experience, right? So that's the point, that we don't have to wait till we die. We can always start thinking about that now, but also the out of body experiences help us to reconnect with that, because when we leave the body and we go to the other dimensions, we can go to these dimensions where we planned our life before we came here, and this can help us remember. Also, it's easier for us to remember our past life, our history. It's easier to remember, to connect with the spirit guides, and also to remember with what specifically we plan to do here. Uh, Not necessarily that you get a plan, a list of things to do, exactly what you have to do, but you kind of reconnect with that feeling and the essence, and you get some guidance. And usually, then in life, you get insights as the next step that you have to take, and just following that. Like you were saying before, as we were talking, you didn't quite know why you started all of this, but something compelled you, and you just kind of went with it. And I think that's kind of what happens afterwards. You see, once you connect, as we get older, we get to look back and we see how our life purpose kind of manifested, or kind of grew, or was stitched together by different little things that we did, different little steps.
It's following your excitement and that inner voice that's filling you, or whatever gives you the most joy. Yes.
And sometimes also it can be challenging. It can be maybe create fear. Like for me, I was before became an instructor, I was very shy. I was usually the girl sitting in the back of the class. Just standing in front of a room of anybody like would be scary to me. But once I decided to become an instructor, it was more for the purpose of because I wanted to share this work, and then I had to overcome. I had to do some training and how to present and how to be comfortable just doing that. And so sometimes it's not just the happy parts, but we kind of there's some challenging things in it too that we go through. And also for me, writing the book and writing about my my health and my health crisis and what I went through, that for me was very scary, very scary. Um, and I had a lot of fears around it, but I think it's going through that and coming out on the other side that's also rewarding.
So sometimes your excitement is masked as fear, and your fear is masked as excitement.
And it's a combination of both, right? So what helps push you through it is the excitement and the purpose and the good intention. And then sometimes what blocks a lot of people is like, ooh, it doesn't feel comfortable, and they kind of step back, or they just, oh, let me just go back to what I've been doing before they sometimes you have these little obstacles or these moments or these fears come up and they stop themselves there, and then just to kind of allow yourselves to work through it to come out on the other side. I think that's important. I mean, you're doing this, but I'm saying a lot of people actually they get to the point and then they stop.
It seems like out of body experience could help getting clarity in a lot of some of these things. Do you have any techniques for people they could start practicing or have an out of body experience?
Yes. So first of all, I would recommend coming to the classes at the IEC. We have a training course. It's 4 weekends where we give you some theory. We also have practical training where you lay down. We practice different techniques for leaving the body. And then this is usually good for people to see which technique works for them, because then there isn't one technique that works for everybody. Some connect more to the one with breathing, or some are more visual. They like the visualization techniques. So I would definitely recommend that if you can, or read Lewis Monier's book. Is very helpful for learning specifically the out-of-body experience. And one technique is simply to just have the intention, right? So without the intention, um, usually nothing necessarily happens. So before you go to bed tonight, actually just think of trying to stay aware, trying to stay conscious, and kind of observe your body falling asleep and trying to disconnect. Because our identity is so tied to the physical body. So when we think when the body sleeps, I have to sleep. But we can kind of separate that. I am a consciousness. My consciousness doesn't have to sleep. It can be aware at night, and my body sleeps. And we try to separate those a little bit. And then to have the intention to, okay, tonight I'm going to try to stay aware, and I'm going to try to go to, let's say, visit my family in New York, um, or some place you really want to go, have a strong desire to go. Um, and then just doing that. So once we have the intention at night, it's much more likely for that to happen. Also reading about out-of-body experiences, and then there are different energy techniques that we can do. So one is running our energy up and down the body. I describe this technique in my book as well, like how to do it specifically, but it's basically focusing your attention here and moving your energies through your body up and down, but not just visualizing, but really feeling the energies pass through you.
Is that what you call
the velo? Yes. So you move it up and down and you try to speed it up. And what this does is, if you imagine we have these different chakras along the body, it's kind of like synchronizing all these energies and putting them in a resonance state and in a vibrational state. I don't know if you've read Raymond Moody's books or these other out-of-body authors. But there's a vibrational state that once we get to that state, sometimes the astral body pops out. And so we can accomplish that with doing the technique.
I kind of had that state, but I got too scared to come out. I didn't.
Yeah.
At that point, I stopped because I think it's very scary at the beginning to leave that contact with your body. It's a practice.
I totally understand, and that's the majority of people, once they get to the point and they feel like, oh, what's happening? They have these sensations and they get scared and they stop. And I used to do that a lot of times too, because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, where am I going to go? And I could feel it, like, oh, it's happening, like, ooh. But then, precisely because of that, once you educate yourself about it and you take the classes, and we go through all of these sensations that you can feel and also why they're there, what's happening, and that they're natural. And we see like, okay, this is nothing really to be worried about. It just means I'm disconnecting, and it just feels different from what I'm used to feeling. Um, and then become more comfortable with the sensations, and the more comfortable we become, the easier it is to just push through it. And the more OBEs we have, the easier it'll be. Then it'll be just like, oh, the buzzing's here, we get excited, and then we go.
And you also talk about silver cord and golden cord. Can you explain? Is it something you can visually see it, or it's just a feeling between your astral body and physical?
It is both. You can the silver cord is the connection that we have that connects the physical body to the non-physical body, and it's more of an energetic cord, usually attaches here at the back of the neck. So when we leave the body, we always have this cord or connection, but it goes through things. It doesn't get tangled up. Nobody can cut it, because sometimes there's these myths out there. Somebody can cut it and you die. That doesn't really happen. It's a non-physical cord that goes through things, but it does connect us nevertheless, and we can see it and feel it. Usually, we're not as aware of it when we're outside of the body, but you can actually grab back and feel it. And I haven't done this, but when people who have, they say it feels very alive and pulsing. Um, but I have, for example, I've seen it outside of the body where I've seen other people that were disconnected and they put the silver cord from their body, physical body to the astral body. So that one you can feel, you can see very more tangibly. And the golden cord is the connection that is between the non-physical body and the mental body. And this is more this one you cannot really see. It's kind of like a remote control connection. It's there, but it's not physically, or you can't really see it, but it does still in some way connect the non-physical body to the mental soul.
That's very fascinating to know. And it's so when you are having an astral projection, you sense that cord, but you can also see others who are having astral projection.
Yes, you can. So that's usually how you recognize who is between lives and who is projected out of body, because the people that are projected, they will have the silver cord. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you always see that, because sometimes our perspective, we have a certain way we expect to see things. So sometimes we tune out the silver cord and we don't, like, let's say I leave the body and I meet with Lewis at the office and we're having a conversation, I probably won't see the silver cord because I'm focused on him. And that's quite common. But if I wanted to focus on it, I could see it. And then people who are between lives, they don't have a silver cord because they don't have a physical body anymore. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. And before we wrap up, can you share what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. The reason why I specifically became more interested on the topic of death was I grew up in Germany and I moved here to the United States, and I was 21 when I arrived here, and I worked here, and then 2 years later I got married, and then through the immigration process I had to go do some health tests. So they check all kinds of things that for you to get your green card. Um, so I did all these tests, and then they called me in, and the doctor said, look, your HIV test came back positive. And that moment changed my entire life. So I was 23 at the time, and I did not expect that at all. And so that was the moment that I had to face my mortality, or that I'm not going to live long, or I didn't even know at the time what that meant. I thought maybe I have 10 years to live, um, and I was had to think about death and about all these things. All my dreams kind of were crushed. I was going to have this long life, do all these things, have children, and all of that, and all of a sudden this is kind of, wiped away. Not entirely, because then later there's a lot of things now that we can have a long, normal life, and I'm much healthier now. But um, I had to really deal with this, and I always felt like I don't have the time to, as other people have. I don't have as long, so whatever I need to do here, I have to do it now, and I try to focus on that. But I also went through like a life crisis where my health declined because I was avoiding to take the medication because I was scared of the medication, and I tried to do everything natural. And so, um, I was between like the natural route worked, but only to some extent. So 5 years later, like my health got worse, and I was like, okay, if I continue what I'm doing, I might die. If I take the medication, I might die from a reaction to it, or like there's this website that I read that talked about all these different how toxic it is, and I was really afraid of it. And so I was between this die this way or die this way, and I went through this deep like crisis of some weeks, really like what do I do? And then I just kind of I decided to take the medication because it was my best option, and it turned out that it, it was great. I didn't have any side effects. It really helped me to heal. My health went back to normal, and I've been suppressed ever since. The virus has been suppressed ever since, and I can live a pretty healthy, normal life. And but before that, my whole mind always revolved around that big issue. Um, and after that, I felt like I had a second chance, and that's when I found the IEC, and I started studying near death experiences, and I learned about the death process in the classes. And I thought, this would have really helped me when I was going through my crisis. And I feel like people need to know more about this, that there are other things that happen on the other side. And that's the reason why I wrote the book more focused on death, because I had to deal with it.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it could help a lot of people who could be secretly struggling with that situation.
Yes, it's uh, for me, just being a young woman, right, 23, and I didn't know anybody in my circle who had this. But then I also realized, because I was so afraid, I mean, such a stigmatized disease that you don't go around talking about. You can't say, oh, I just got bad lab results today, and go to your friends and get some support because you're like afraid of the rejection or how people react. And so I would keep it secret, and anybody who would have this would keep it secret. Um, and then there's also the factor of the intimacy, right? So you're afraid to be intimate, to be romantic, and it's such a difficult challenge. Um, and yes, I was very in my 20s. I was very afraid, but I thought with the book, because it's the reason why what led me to write this book. It's also I should share that aspect, and it was very scary, but I decided to just do it. And so far, um, it has actually helped me to be more free and more open. And I do feel like, there are many people out there, nobody really knows about it because people don't talk about it. They would never share it, and they just, in their own isolation, kind of struggle with this. And I wanted to kind of give them maybe a little bit hope that um, it is okay, or just that I'm here. If somebody is affected by this, I'm willing to talk, or to, in any way that I can. Um, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful message. Thank you. What is your advice for people who are currently struggling through those fears? What are some of the first steps they could take to?
Um, I think this is a process, and it does take time for me to just be more comfortable, to be more older and mature, to accept that and to kind of let go of these fears and just to take little steps. So maybe talk about it with one friend that you feel like would be accepting or understanding, or talking to the family. And then once you have these little moments of it's okay, they understand, they then that'll lead to more steps that we can open up a little bit more. So that's how it was for me. So I just opened up to one person and then maybe to a partner that I had, maybe also because I have to, right? But that was also a big struggle. But going through it, it helped me to do it then again and again. And in my case, I don't know how it is for everyone else, but in my case, the feedback has been positive, and most of the fears that I have haven't really manifested in that way that we think when we're in the situation. So I recommend just doing little steps, and then it's a process, and then just do it again a little bit more, and little by little you open up, and you'll see that it's actually kind of freeing to be just be open, because you can be yourself and you can be more authentically who you are, and just the burden of having to hide things and being fearful all the time, it takes a lot of energy. Um, but I do understand it's takes time. It's not everybody's ready, But I'm here if anybody needs help or just to talk.
Thank you. What after that intense experience, what was your realization about what matters the most in life?
I immediately realized that my health is very important, right? I didn't take much care of it before, and after that, it became very important for me to exercise, nutrition, to really keep myself healthy and alive, and just appreciating that I have a body, that I am alive. And then seeing people around me who would do drugs or who would harm their body, like just recreationally, or would do things, and that would always make me sad. I'm like, they do things that destroy their body, and I wish I had that health. I wish I had that. So I realized that afterwards. But also the relationships that we have, how important that is, spending time, and then and I think anybody who has had maybe cancer or like anything that brings them close to death, they realize how precious time is, and um, we just appreciate every moment that we have here much more. We appreciate the little things, and for me, that's very important. But also has been very positive in my life, so I wouldn't want to miss it.
I'm really glad your health is back to normal, and I wish you a very long, healthy life.
Thank you so much, Soma. Thank you for having me, and I admire your work too.
And I greatly enjoyed preparing for this interview while I was glimpsing to your book and reading your material. It's been expansive for me at a very personal level. And I definitely admire your courage for sharing this message, because a lot of people struggle through this in isolation, and it's important we open up and
Yes.
share with each other. Thank you so much. And again, Eunice's book is Death is Not the End. You can find more information about her at inesbeyer.com. I'm going to post the links at the bottom of this video, and thank you so much for watching this. See you.